No armor. No noise. Still, every predator recognized her instantly. Transport ship docked at Galactic Station Vayner 7 with a soft hiss of pressure seals. And among the dozens of passengers who stepped onto the main concourse, only one drew every eye in the massive chamber. She was not tall, not young, not armed. Dion Zhuyan walked with the unhurried pace of someone who had nowhere urgent to be. Her simple gray traveling clothes marking her a civilian. Her silver-streaked black hair pulled back in a practical knot. Her hands empty and relaxed at her sides. She carried no weapons that anyone could see, wore no armor of any kind, and had no security escort following her steps. Yet the moment she entered the station's central hub, something strange began to happen. A Vraxian hunter 8 feet of scaled muscle and razor-sharp spine stopped mid-sentence in his conversation and turned his massive head toward her, his vertical pupils narrowing to slits across the concourse. A pack of Korra stalkers fell silent, their amber eyes tracking her movement with an intensity usually reserved for prey they intended to kill near the trading stalls. A group of Dendari pack leaders, apex predators from a death world, even more hostile than Earth, actually stepped backward, creating space she had not asked for. Noise of the station, usually a constant roar of commerce and conflict in 100 different languages, dropped to something quieter, something watchful. Xiao Yan noticed none of it. Or perhaps she simply did not care, walking steadily toward the lifts that would take her to the lower levels. Kang Minjun noticed everything. He was 26 years old, a human trader who had spent 3 years on Vayner 7 learning how to survive among species that could kill him with a casual swipe of their claws. And in all that time, he had never seen anything like this. What is happening? He muttered to himself, watching the old woman pass through crowds that parted for her like water around a stone. He had seen human soldiers come through the station before, Marines in full combat armor with plasma rifles and hard eyes. And even they had to watch their backs, had to move in groups, had to show strength or be seen as weak. This woman showed nothing, carried nothing, feared nothing, and somehow that made every predator on the station afraid of Herman Jun. Made a decision that would change his life. Pushing away from the wall where he had been watching and moving to intercept her before she reached the lifts. "Excuse me," he said, falling into step beside her. "I do not mean to intrude, but I could not help noticing that everyone is staring." Xiao Yan finished for him, her voice calm and soft, the voice of a teacher or a grandmother. "Yes, I noticed. Do you know why?" She glanced at him then, and Minjun felt something cold touch his spine. Not because her eyes were cruel or threatening, but because they were not. Because they held a gentleness that somehow made the fear he saw in the predators around them even more confusing. "I do," she said simply. She did not elaborate. And after a moment of walking in silence, Minjun tried again. "The lower levels are dangerous," he said. "Even for armed groups, even for species that evolved to kill. The lower levels of this station are not safe." "I know. You are going there alone." "I am. May I ask why?" Xiao Yan stopped walking, and Minjun stopped with her. And for a moment she studied his face with an expression he could not read. "You are young," she said. "Young and curious and brave enough to approach a stranger when everyone else keeps their distance. Those are good qualities, Mr. Kang," he said quickly. "Kang Minjun. Mr. Kang," she repeated with a small nod. "I am going to the lower levels because someone there needs my help. Someone who has been waiting a very long time, and I will not keep them waiting any longer." "Then let me come with you," Minjun said, surprising himself with the offer. "I know the station. I know the dangers. You can die," Xiao Yan interrupted gently. "The lower levels would kill you in an hour, Mr. Kang, and I will not have your death on my conscience. But you will survive?" "Yes." There was no arrogance in the word, no boasting, just a simple statement of fact, like saying the stars were bright or space was cold. How can you be so sure? Seo Yeon smiled then, and it was a sad smile. The smile of someone carrying a weight that Minjun could not see, because the things that live in the lower levels are predators, she said. And predators have very good instincts about what they should and should not hunt. She turned to continue walking, and Minjun stood frozen, watching her go. Watching the crowds continue to part for her. Watching the most dangerous beings in the sector give ground to an old woman in gray clothes near the lifts. A Vraxian elder grabbed the arm of a younger warrior who had started to move toward her, and Minjun was close enough to hear the harsh whisper that passed between them. "Do not look into her eyes," the elder said, his voice carrying a tremor that Minjun had never heard from that species. "That one has ended worlds." The young warrior stopped, confusion and fear mixing on his scaled face, and the elder pulled him back, away from the path of the woman who walked without armor and without weapons, and, without fear, Seo Yeon entered the lift alone, pressing the button for the deepest level, and as the doors began to close, her eyes met Minchun's one last time. There was something in that look. Something that made him understand why every predator on the station recognized her. It was not hatred, not cruelty, not the cold efficiency of a killer. It was sorrow. The sorrow of someone who had done terrible things for necessary reasons, who had made choices that could not be unmade, who carried the weight of those choices every single day. The doors closed, and she was gone. Descending into the darkness below the station were only the most desperate and dangerous creatures. Live Minjun stood there for a long moment, surrounded by predators who had returned to their business now that she was out of sight. And he made another decision. He would find out who she was, would find out what she had done to make the galaxy's deadliest hunters step aside for her, and somehow, though he could not explain why, he knew that his life had just become entangled with something far larger and more dangerous than anything he had faced in his 3 years on this station in the lift, descending through levels that grew darker and more dangerous with each floor. Seo Yeon closed her eyes and let out a breath she had been holding since she arrived. "I am coming," she whispered to no one, to the darkness, to a ghost that had haunted her for 15 years. "I am finally coming." The lift continued downward, carrying her toward a meeting she had both dreaded and longed for, toward a reckoning with her past, toward a chance at something she had stopped believing she deserved: redemption. No armor, no noise. Still, every predator recognized her instantly. The lower levels of Vayner 7 were everything the upper levels pretended not to be. Here there was no illusion of law, no pretense of civilization, only the raw and honest truth that the strong survived and the weak became food or property or entertainment for those with sharper claws. Seo Yeon walked through corridors stained with old blood and new desperation, past creatures that snarled and hissed and displayed their weapons, and not a single one of them touched her. They watched her pass, with the same expressions she had seen above: confusion and recognition and something very close to terror, and she understood why, even if she wished she did not. 15 years ago, she had been a different woman. 15 years ago, she had been Dr. Yoon Seo Yeon, lead xenobiologist for the United Earth Research Initiative, a scientist who believed in understanding alien life and building bridges between species, in the power of knowledge to bring peace. Then the hurricane came. The memory rose unbidden as she walked, and she let it come. Let the weight of it settle on her shoulders, where it had lived for more than a decade. The hurricane had been insectoid, a hive species with bodies like nightmares and minds that worked in perfect, terrible unity. And they had swept through human colonial space like a plague of locusts made of chitin and hunger. They took 3 colony worlds in the first month. And at first humanity did not understand what they wanted, did not understand why they took prisoners instead of simply killing every Seo Yeon learned the truth when they took her. She had been on Meridian 4 when the hurricane swarm descended, had been in a research station studying local wildlife when the sky turned black with their ships. And she remembered running, remembered screaming, remembered the moment when clawed limbs grabbed her and dragged her into a living ship that smelled of acid and death. They kept her alive because she was a scientist, because they had learned that humans with knowledge could be useful, could be made to serve the hive in ways that simple laborers could not. For 3 months. She lived inside their hive for 3 months. She saw things that still woke her screaming in the night. The hurricane collected children, human children specifically, because human young were resilient and adaptable and could survive procedures that killed adults. Because human children could be modified and changed and turned into something useful for the hive's purposes. Yu Yan saw the laboratories where they did their work, saw the small bodies and the instruments, and the cold clinical efficiency of a species that viewed human children as nothing more than raw material to be shaped. She saw, and she remembered, and she learned, because that was what she was: a scientist, an observer, someone trained to understand alien biology, even when that biology was being used to commit horrors beyond imagination. In those 3 months, she learned everything about the hurricanes, learned their biology, mapping their systems with the desperate precision of someone who had nothing left but her mind, memorizing their weaknesses and their strengths and the chemical signals they used to communicate. She learned their social structure, understanding how the hive mind worked, how individual hurricane could be separated from the collective, how their unity was both their greatest strength and their most vulnerable point. She learned what could kill them when human forces finally found a way to rescue the surviving captives. CEO Yan emerged from the hive with knowledge that no one else possessed, knowledge that could end the hurricane threat forever, and humanity asked her to use it. She remembered the meeting with the generals and the politicians, remembered the clinical language they used to describe what they wanted. Targeted biological intervention, they called it. Species-specific neutralization, remembered how they looked at her with hope and desperation, and the barely hidden plea for permission to do something terrible. She could have said no. She could have argued for another way, for negotiations, for containment, for any solution that did not involve what they were truly asking. But she had seen the children in those laboratories. She had seen what the hurricane did to them, what they planned to do to thousands more. And she had understood with perfect clarity that this species would never stop, could never be reasoned with, would continue hunting and taking and experimenting until there were no human children left to take. So she said yes. She designed the pathogen herself, using everything she had learned in those 3 months of captivity, creating a biological weapon so perfectly tailored to hurricane physiology that it spread through their hive links like fire through dry grass within 6 months. There were no hurricane left in the galaxy within a year. Humanity had confirmed that every world they had infested was clean, every hive destroyed, every member of the species dead or dying. They called her a hero. They gave her medals and honors and the eternal gratitude of the human race. And she accepted all of it with a smile that felt like broken glass on her face. And then she disappeared because she knew the truth that the medals and honors could not change. She had committed genocide. She had ended an entire species, wiped them from existence as completely as if they had never been. And no amount of justification could change the fundamental horror of what she had done. The hurricane had been monsters. Yes, but they had also been alive, had been a form of intelligence that had evolved over millions of years, had been a part of the universe's vast tapestry of life, and she had erased them. For 15 years she had lived with that weight, had tried to find peace in quiet work and isolation, had told herself over and over that she had done what was necessary now. Walking through the lower levels of Vayner 7, she was about to face the truth she had been running from her. Destination was a hidden medical bay in the deepest section of the station, a place that did not officially exist, maintained by creatures who had their own reasons for keeping secrets from the wider galaxy. She knew who was waiting for her there, had known since the encrypted message reached her 3 weeks ago. A message that should have been impossible because its sender should have been dead. There was a Hurricane still alive, one survivor, one last member of a species she had destroyed, reaching out to the architect of their extinction with a request that defied all logic. "Come," the message had said. "I am dying, and I need the only human who ever truly understood us." Seoyeon reached the door of the hidden medical bay and stopped. Her hand raced to knock, her heart pounding with fear and guilt and something that might have been hope. On the other side of that door was the last living proof of her greatest sign-on. The other side was a chance, perhaps the only chance she would ever have to understand what redemption might look like for someone who had ended a world. She knocked. The door opened, and for the first time in 15 years, Seoyeon looked into the eyes of a Hurricane. No armor, no noise. Still, every predator recognized her instantly. The Hurricane was ancient and broken, her chitinous body cracked in a dozen places, her compound eyes clouded with age and pain, her limbs trembling with the effort of simply remaining upright on the medical platform. Seoyeon stood in the doorway, frozen by the sight of a creature she had believed extinct, a creature from her nightmares, a creature she had designed a weapon specifically to destroy. "You came," the Hurricane said, her voice a rasping whisper produced by specialized organs that Seoyeon had studied 15 years ago. "I was not certain you would. I came," Seoyeon replied, her own voice steady through sheer force of will. "I had to know why you called me. Close the door, please. What I have to say is not for other ears." Seoyeon stepped inside and sealed the door behind her, and the small medical bay suddenly felt like a cage, like a tomb, like the inside of a hive she had never truly escaped. "You know who I am," she said. And it was not a question. "Yes, Dr. Yun Seoyeon. The human who understood us better than any other. The human who used that understanding to end our existence. Then why am I here? Why did you call me? You should want me dead." The Hurricane made a sound that might have been laughter, or might have been a cough, or might have been the sound of something breaking inside her ruined body. "I am dying," she said. "I have been dying for 15 years, holding on through nothing but will and purpose, waiting for the moment when I could do what needs to be done. What needs to be done." The Hurricane shifted on the platform, and the Seoyeon saw for the first time what was hidden behind her damaged body, a small stasis container, humming with quiet power, its surface covered in Hurricane symbols that Seoyeon could still read. 12 eggs, the Hurricane said. "The last of my kind, preserved before your weapon spread through the hive links. Hidden here where no one would think to look." Seoyeon felt the floor tilt beneath her feet, felt the universe shift into a configuration she had never imagined possible. 12 eggs, she repeated, the words barely audible. 12 chances for our species to exist again. 12 possibilities that I have protected with the last of my strength. And now I am asking you to take them. Me? You, the woman who destroyed your entire species, the architect of your extinction. You want me to take the last hope of the Hurricane race? Yes, Seoyeon wanted to laugh, wanted to scream, wanted to run from this room and never look back. But her feet would not move, and her voice would not rise above a whisper. Why? The Hurricane was silent for a long moment, her clouded eyes fixed on Seoyeon with an intensity that transcended the damage of age and illness. "Do you know my name?" she finally asked. "No. I am Quiveth. And 15 years ago, I was a keeper of knowledge, what you might call a scientist. Though our concept was different from yours. A scientist," Seoyeon said slowly. "Not a warrior, not a hunter, Not all Hurricane were the same. They are yun, just as not all humans are the same. We had our hunters and our builders and our thinkers. We had those who delighted in cruelty and those who questioned it. You questioned it. I did. I questioned what we did to your children, questioned the purpose of experiments that seemed designed more for suffering than for knowledge, questioned whether our path would lead anywhere but destruction. But you did nothing to stop it. No, Quiveth admitted. I did nothing, and that failure haunts me as much as your weapon haunts you. Seo Yeon moved closer, her fear fading in the face of something she had never expected to find in a hurricane: regret, remorse, the weight of choices that could not be unmade. You could give these eggs to anyone, she said. There are species in this galaxy that would see your resurrection as a victory. That would help you rebuild without asking questions. And they would raise warriors, Quiveth replied. They would raise hunters who remember only the old ways, who would seek revenge for what was done to us, who would become exactly what we were before. And you do not want that. No. I want something else, something that perhaps only a human could understand. What? Quiveth's trembling limbs reached toward the stasis container, touching it with something that looked almost like tenderness. I want my people to have a second chance, she said. Not to be what we were, but to become what we could have been. And for that I need someone who understands us completely, who knows our biology and our nature and our potential for both cruelty and something better. You want me to change them. I want you to save them from themselves. The way you saved your own children from us. Seo Yeon stared at the stasis container, at the 12 eggs that represented the only surviving members of a species she had exterminated. And she felt something crack inside her chest. I destroyed your people, she said, her voice breaking on the words. I designed a weapon that killed billions of your kind. And you're asking me to be the one who brings them back? You understood us, Quiveth said. You lived among us and you learned what we truly were. Not just the monsters your people saw, but the complete picture. The intelligence and the instinct, and the terrible choices that shaped our species over millions of years. I understood you well enough to destroy you. Yes, and that is why I trust you. Seo Yeon shook her head, unable to process the logic, unable to reconcile this dying alien's faith with everything she knew about herself. How can you trust me? How can you possibly believe that I am the right person for this? Quiveth's broken body straightened slightly, her clouded eyes clearing for just a moment with something that looked like absolute certainty. Because you understood us completely, she said. You knew our cruelty and our hunger and our sins. You saw the worst of what we were. And you still wept for us when we died. Seo Yeon's breath caught in her throat, because it was true. Because even as she had watched her weapon spread through the hurricane hive worlds, she had cried for them, had mourned the loss of a species, even as she acknowledged its necessity. Only someone who truly understood what they were destroying could be trusted to decide if we deserve a second chance. Quiveth continued. Only someone who felt the weight of our extinction could be trusted to guide our resurrection. Before Seo Yeon could respond, before she could process the enormity of what was being asked of her, an alarm began to scream through the station. Red lights flashed in the medical bay, and the sound of heavy footsteps echoed from somewhere in the corridors outside. They found me, Quiveth said, her voice suddenly urgent. Bounty hunters who have been tracking me for years. They want the glory of true extinction, of ending the last hurricane, of being the ones who finished what you started. Seo Yeon looked at the door, then at the stasis container, then at the dying alien who had placed all her hope in the hands of her greatest enemy. Take the eggs, Quiveth said. Take them and run. Do not let them destroy the last chance my people have. The footsteps were getting closer, and Seo Yeon could hear voices now, harsh and eager. The voices of predators who smelled blood. She had come here seeking redemption. had not expected it to arrive in the form of 12 eggs and an impossible choice. No armor, no noise. Still, every predator recognized her instantly. Door to the medical bay shuddered under the impact of something massive. And Seo Yeon knew she had only moments to decide. Take them, Quivet said again, pushing the stasis container toward her with the last of her strength. Take them and go through the service corridor behind the far wall. It leads to the maintenance tunnels. I am not leaving you to face them alone. I am already dead. Dr. Yoon, I have been dead for 15 years. I was simply waiting for you. Another impact rocked the door, and Seo Yeon could hear the metal beginning to give way. There is no time for argument, Quivet hissed. If they find the eggs, they will destroy them. And everything I have suffered will mean nothing. Seo Yeon grabbed the stasis container, feeling its weight in her hands. Feeling the impossible responsibility of 12 lives that should not exist. I will find a way, she said. And the words felt like a promise, like an oath. Like a chain wrapping around her soul. I know you will. The door burst inward. And Seo Yeon Ranchi hit the hidden panel in the far wall and slipped through the gap, just as the first hunter entered the medical bay. A massive Karath whose roar of fury shook the walls. The service corridor was narrow and dark, barely wide enough for a human to pass, and Seo Yeon moved through it as fast as she could. The stasis container clutched against her chest. Behind her, she heard Quivet's voice, weak but defiant, taunting the hunters, buying time with words because she had no strength left for anything else then. Silence, then the sound of pursuit. Seo Yeon emerged into a maintenance junction and found herself face to face with Kang Min-jun, who stood there with wide eyes and a small pistol in his trembling hands. I followed you, he said quickly. I know you told me not to, but I could not. What is that? No time to explain. We need to move. There are hunters coming from every direction. I counted 7 of them, all apex predators. All armed. Then we find another way. There is no other way. The only exit is back through the main corridor. Seo Yeon looked at the young trader, at the fear in his eyes, at the gun in his hands. And she made a decision. Stay here with this, she said, pressing the stasis container into his arms. Protect it with your life. What is it? The future, maybe, or a second chance. I am not entirely sure which. Where are you going? To do what I should have done 15 years ago. She turned and walked back toward the maintenance junction. Back toward the sounds of heavy footsteps and snarling voices. Back toward 7 of the most dangerous hunters in the sector Min-jun called after her. But she did not stop. The junction opened into the main corridor of the lower level. And Seo Yeon stepped into the center of it just as the hunters came into view. There were 7 of them. Just as Min-jun had said, 3 Kara stalkers with their amber eyes and retractable claws. 2 Vraxian hunters covered in scales and spines. A Dendari pack leader whose teeth were still stained with fresh blood and leading them all. A massive Karath whose size and bearing marked him as the leader. Well, the leader said, his voice a rumble of satisfaction. What do we have here? A human female, alone and unarmed, blocking our path. I am blocking your path, Seo Yeon confirmed. Her voice steady. Move aside, small creature. Our business is not with you. Your business is with what I am protecting, which makes it very much with me. The Korath laughed, and the sound echoed through the corridor like breaking stones. Protecting? You? An old human with no weapons and no armor? What could you possibly do to stop us? I could ask you the same question. What could you possibly do to stop me? The laughter died, replaced by confusion and the first stirrings of anger. You threaten us? You, alone, threaten 7 of the deadliest hunters in this sector? I do not threaten, Seo Yeon said. I simply state facts. And the fact is that you will not pass me. The chorus leader stepped forward, his claws extending, his muscles coiling for a strike that would tear through human flesh like paper. "I am Syvex," he growled. "I have killed 100 enemies in personal combat. I have hunted prey across a dozen worlds. I have never been defeated by any species. I know who you are. Then you know that you cannot stop me. Do you know who I am?" The question hung in the air, and something in Sil Yin's tone made Syvex hesitate, made his claws retract slightly, made the other hunters shift uneasily behind him. "You are a human," he said. But there was doubt in his voice now. "I am Dr. Yun Seo Yan." The effect was immediate and devastating. One of the Vraxian hunters actually stepped backward, his scales turning pale, his spines flattening against his body in a gesture of submission. The Dendari pack leader made a sound that might have been a whimper, her bloody teeth hidden behind suddenly closed jaws. Even Syvex, the great and undefeated Syvex, went still, his amber eyes widening with recognition and fear. "The Hurricane," he whispered. "You are the one who—" "Yes, but that is impossible." The Hurricane were an apex predator species. They terrorized this galaxy for centuries. No single being could— "I did not say it was easy," Seo Yan interrupted. "I said I did it, alone, without armor, without armies, with nothing but knowledge and the will to use it. You killed billions. I ended a species. And I did it because they were hunting human children, because they would never stop. Because no force in the galaxy could make them stop except extinction." She took a step forward, and every hunter took a step back. "I am not blocking this door because I have weapons," she said, her voice quiet and calm and absolutely certain. "I am blocking it because I am the weapon. I understood the Hurricane completely. I mapped their biology. I designed a pathogen that spread through their hive minds and killed them all. And I did it without ever picking up a gun." Another step forward, another step back. "You are predators," she continued. "You hunt and you kill, and you understand strength. So let me tell you what strength truly is. Strength is not claws or teeth or armor. Strength is the will to do what must be done, no matter the cost, no matter the weight it leaves on your soul." Syvex's claws had fully retracted now, and his massive body seemed smaller somehow, diminished by the truth of what stood before him. "I have already committed genocide once," Seo Yin said. "I carry that weight every day of my life, and I have learned to bear it because I know it was necessary. So ask yourself this question. If I was willing to destroy an entire species to protect children, what do you think I would do to 7 hunters who are standing between me and something I have sworn to protect?" The silence stretched, broken only by the harsh breathing of predators who had suddenly realized they were not the most dangerous thing in the room. "We did not know," one of the Vraxian hunters said, his voice trembling. "We did not know it was you. Now you do. So I will ask you once, and only once, will you leave?" Syvex stared at her for a long moment, his amber eyes searching her face for any sign of weakness, any hint that she was bluffing. He found nothing but absolute resolve. "We will leave," he said finally, and the words seemed to cost him something precious. The hunters retreated, backing away from the small human woman who had ended worlds, and Seo Yan watched them go without moving, without blinking, without showing any sign of the fear that was screaming in her chest. Only when they had disappeared around the corner did she allow herself to breathe. Only when the corridor was empty did she turn and walk back to where Minjun was waiting, the stasis container still clutched in his shaking arms. "What just happened?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "I chose mercy," she said, taking the container from him, and they were wise enough to accept it. No armor, no noise. Still, every predator recognized her instantly. 6 months had passed since the night on Vayner 7, and Dr. Yun Seo Yan stood in a laboratory that should not exist. Watching 12 creatures that should not be alive, the research station orbited a dead world in a system that appeared on no charts. Funded by resources she had accumulated over 15 years of quiet work. Staffed by a team of 3 people, she trusted with her life and her crimes. The first was Dr. Park Ji-hoon, a geneticist who had lost his entire family to the hurricane and had every reason to want them extinct forever, but who had listened to her story and chosen to believe in second chances. The second was Dr. Chen Wei-lin, a xenobiologist who had studied the hurricane from captured specimens and understood their potential for both destruction and something else. Something that had never been given the chance to emerge. The third was Kang Min-jun, who had followed her from Vayner 7 and refused to leave, who had become her assistant and her conscience, and her reminder that hope could exist even in the darkest places. They are growing faster than predicted, Ji-hoon said. Checking the readings on his datapad, the neural modifications seemed to be integrating perfectly. Seo Yeon nodded, watching the 12 young hurricane move through their enclosure with a curiosity that was entirely unlike the cold efficiency of their ancestors. The modifications had been her design, based on everything she had learned during her captivity 15 years ago, targeting the specific neural clusters that had driven the species toward cruelty and dominance, suppressing them without destroying the intelligence and adaptability that had made the hurricane such formidable creatures. Are we doing the right thing? Min-jun asked, standing beside her at the observation window. It was a question he asked often, and she answered it the same way every time. I do not know. That is not very reassuring. It is not meant to be. I committed genocide because I was certain, because I knew I was right, and I have carried the weight of that certainty ever since. Now I am doing something equally momentous, and I refuse to be certain about it. So we proceed with doubt. We proceed with humility, with caution, with the understanding that we might be making a terrible mistake, and with the hope that this time the mistake might lead somewhere better. Min-jun was quiet for a moment, watching the young hurricane interact with each other, their movements gentle and exploratory rather than aggressive. They are different, he said finally. Even I can see it. Yes, they are. Will it last? When they grow up, when they become adults, will the changes hold? Seo Yeon turned to look at him, at the young man who had risked everything to follow her into the unknown. The hurricane evolved on a world of scarcity and competition, she said. Their cruelty was not inherent to their nature. It was a survival adaptation, a response to an environment that rewarded aggression and punished cooperation. We have changed their neurology, but more importantly, we are changing their environment by raising them with care, by raising them with purpose. They will learn that cooperation leads to better outcomes than conflict, that kindness is not weakness, that the universe can be something other than an endless war for survival. And if it does not work, if they revert to what they were? Seo Yeon was silent for a long moment, her eyes returning to the observation window. Then I will do what is necessary, she said quietly. I have already proven that I am capable of ending their species. I will not hesitate to do it again if they become what they were. That is a terrible thing to carry. Yes, it is, but it is also the price of what we are doing here. We are not just raising 12 creatures, we are resurrecting a species. And with that comes the responsibility to ensure they do not become a threat to others. One of the young hurricane approached the observation window, its compound eyes focusing on Seo Yeon with an intensity that should have been frightening. Instead, it pressed one small limb against the glass and made a sound, a soft, chirping sound that the translation system struggled to interpret. What is it saying? Min-jun asked as Seo Yeon checked the readout, and her breath caught in her throat. Safe, she whispered. It is saying safe. She pressed her own hand against the glass, matching the young hurricane's gesture. and for a moment, the two of them remained there, separated by mere centimeters of transparent material, connected by something that had no name. "Do you know why the predators on Vayner 7 recognized you?" Minjin asked. His voice soft, because they knew what I had done. "No. I have thought about it a great deal, and I think it was something else." "What?" "They recognized you because you are what they pretend to be. They are predators who hunt and kill because it is their nature. But you are something more. You are a creature who chose to become dangerous, who looked at the worst the universe could throw at you, and decided that you would be worse if that was what it took to protect what you loved." Xiao Yan turned away from the window, and Minjun saw tears in her eyes. "I did not want to become this," she said. "I know. I wanted to be a scientist, a bridge builder, someone who understood alien life and helped humanity connect with it. And you still are. Look at what you are doing here. Look at what you are building. I am building an experiment, one that might fail, one that might result in the resurrection of a species that terrorized the galaxy, or one that might result in redemption. For them and for you." The young hurricane at the window made another sound, and this time the translation was clearer. "Mother," it said. "Safe mother." Sei Yian closed her eyes, and for a moment the weight of 15 years lifted from her shoulders, replaced by something lighter, something that felt almost like hope. "I destroyed a species to save children," she said. "And now I am resurrecting that species to save myself. Is that wrong?" "I do not know. I genuinely do not know. But I know that Quiveth trusted me with this responsibility. And I know that refusing it would have been the true crime." She opened her eyes and looked at the 12 young hurricane. At the future she was building one day at a time. At the second chance she had never expected to receive. "The galaxy's predators recognized me on sight because they knew what I was capable of," she said. "But none of them understood the most dangerous thing about humans." "What is that?" Xiao Yan smiled, and it was not a sad smile this time. Not the smile of someone carrying an unbearable weight. "We are capable of anything," she said, "including forgiveness." The young hurricane at the window chirped again, and this time the sound was unmistakable. Even without translation, it was laughter, and somewhere in that laughter, Xiao Yan heard the beginning of something new, something that had never existed before, something that might one day prove that even the worst mistakes could lead to the most beautiful redemptions. She had ended a world with knowledge and will now. She would build a new one, and this time, she would do it with love.